Hey guys, and welcome back to the Yes Means Yes podcast. On this week's episode, we're going to be talking about kind of like the legal system with Parker and McCullough with Lanett PD here in Auburn, or Lanett, Alabama. So I'm going to go ahead and let Amanda and Mallory introduce themselves, and then let Lieutenant McCullough kind of talk about what he does, what his role is, how long he's been with the Lanett PD.
Hey guys, I'm Amanda and I'm also with RCEA. I am a victim advocate and I'm also the outreach specialist. And I work with Faith, and then we now have Mallory on board with us. So I'll let Mallory introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Mallory. I am an Auburn student and I'm also an intern with RCEA, and I've been a volunteer also and a victim advocate.
Hi, I'm Patrick McCullough. I work for Lanett Police Department. I've been an investigator for about 6 years, and I've been with the department for about 8.
Perfect. All right. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking with us today. So we're going to kind of go into our questions, just some kind of legal things that maybe a victim would be thinking or just the general public may not be aware of. So walk us through the process of when you go and pick up a rape kit. Like what do you do with it? How do you get it? Who do you get it from? Kind of go through that with us.
Okay. Well, we would typically provide the rape kit. We would, in most instances, we would either have somebody that comes to the police department or may go to the hospital to report that they've been assaulted. It's not all that common that we would be called to a home or a residence. Typically, our involvement begins either at the police department or the hospital. So that's kind of where we start our process. Of course, if we're at the police department, we'll gather whatever information we need to start the process of getting an idea of what happened and what steps to take next. And if it sounds as though there's been a sexual assault, we will travel to the hospital with the victim and have a nurse collect a rape kit, or a sexual assault kit is what we call it. Now, depending on what facility we go to, there may or may not be a SANE nurse available to collect that kit. So a SANE nurse is a specially trained nurse where I guess it's a sexual assault nurse examiner, I believe is what the term stands for. So they've been specially trained in collecting the kit and the components in it and interacting with the victim. But, there's nothing in the kit that a trained nurse wouldn't be able to collect. But I think the SANE nurses are a little further trained, and they're a little more comfortable with collecting it. And I think a lot of it's interacting with the victim as well. I see a lot of hesitancy if there's not a SANE nurse available. The nurses want to help, but they seem to be a little hesitant about how to go. They know the person's already been traumatized, and they're afraid that the process of collecting the kit is pretty invasive, of course, especially if somebody's been through a bad situation. So we would go through that process, whether it be a regular nurse or a SANE nurse. There's evidentiary issues that we have to ensure are met. The kit comes in a box that has all the different components for biological samples and clothing and stuff. Once those things are collected, we have to make sure that the box is sealed and initialed by the person who collected it. That starts our chain of custody on that sexual assault kit. From there, the kit would come back to the police department where it would be logged into evidence. It would receive an inventory number, and then it would be taken to Montgomery, which is our local lab with the State Department of Forensic Science, where they would then take it through the process of examining the clothing items and the biological samples that were taken to try to determine if there was any substances that might be evident, of an evidentiary value.
Mm-hmm. So just to clarify for like anyone listening, this process is only if you choose to report the rape or you have like any police involvement. So there is an option to not have police involvement. That is a Jane Doe kit. So what Lieutenant McCullough is speaking on is if police are involved, this is what would happen. If you do have a Jane Doe, then the procedures would be different, and that is an option, just for anyone going.
So I want to be clear that the collection of the kit is only with the cooperation of the victim. We're never going to force anybody to submit to any testing, from the victim aspect of it. So the collection of the kit is going to be voluntary, and it's only going to be under circumstances where we feel like the collection of the kit is going to produce evidence or have the possibility of collecting evidence. For a lot of different reasons. Sometimes there's a large delay in reporting of sexual assaults. So if we feel like the time frame is too great to expect it to gather evidence from the examination, then we will just forego the examination and use other investigative methods to try to build a case.
So if someone were assaulted, and in the state of Alabama, you have 72 hours to have a kit done. So if they were to be assaulted but not have a kit done, you are saying that if they wanted to press charges, you would still be able to make a case or try to present a case?
We would do our best. We're always going to, with any allegation, whether it's sexual assault or any other thing, we're going to document the complaint, the allegation, and witness testimony. There's so many factors that would go into it. And many times we may collect the kit and there is no semen or anything recovered from the kit. That does not indicate in any way that there wasn't a sexual assault. So that's just a tool that we have in the toolbox, so to speak. If somebody reports to us that they were sexually assaulted years ago, we will still follow up on any leads that we're able to develop. Now, quite honestly, the longer the delay on the reporting, it's going to make it more difficult locating witnesses or expecting them to recall details that may have seemed insignificant at the time, but may help prove the case, may have been forgotten. So, I understand there's a lot of different things that go into delaying reporting, but of course it does, sometimes makes it more difficult.
Definitely. Is there a statute of limitations in Alabama based on when someone can file charges after an assault?
No. There's two statutes that cover rape, which is going to be a sexual assault involving intercourse in the normal manner, I would guess you'd say. And that's going to be a Class A felony, so there's no statute of limitation on that. That can be prosecuted, going forward, so we will look into that no matter what.
I have a question. So, Lieutenant, if someone comes to the hospital and they tell you that assault just happened, do you guys, and they're telling you their report, do you guys still have to go and talk to the person that's being accused of the sexual assault, or just say the victim or survivor says, I don't want you guys to go talk to them? By law, do you guys have to go and talk to them and interview that person if they are accused of a crime?
We have to show that we have made a common sense approach to the investigation of it. So if I don't talk to somebody and there may be a specific reason why I've chosen not to speak to them at that time. There may be other factors that come up that I may not want to. But that's really left up to the investigator on how they want to conduct the investigation. I just have to show I have a duty to investigate. So how I do that is basically up to me, but I just have to show that I've, done my job,
Okay. Yeah, I was just asking because I know that we had a situation one time where we went to the hospital and the victim had, told her story and had, told who it was. And when she got done, telling the police officer, she was like, I don't want y'all to contact him at this time. Well, they had already, that police officer had already contacted, I guess, the station, and someone had already went out there and talked to the actual person that, she had, mentioned his name, and she was really upset about it. So it helps, us to know as well, like what that procedure looks like. If they do talk to you guys, do they need to know that they will be contacted and told that there is a suspect of sexual assault?
I would say that and I apologize. Let me change my my vocabulary here. The survivor can certainly voice their concerns, and we will try to the best of our ability to respect their request, but they don't necessarily get to dictate the course of the investigation. So if it's necessary for us to interview the named offender, then that's what we're going to do. When they contact us and ask us for our assistance, they're not necessarily in control of the investigation. Like I said, we're going to try to be sensitive to their desires and all that. And if there's something that we feel needs to be done, but they're not comfortable with it, we're going to take the time to try to make, explain why it's necessary and try to get them on board with the way we're going to conduct the investigation, if possible.
Awesome. Good deal. Okay, so Mallory.
Okay, so our next question is going to be about the number of cases. And so we do know that some sexual assaults do go unreported. So we're curious to know how many cases did you see in the 2019 to 2020 period? And also, do you think that number has increased or decreased?
Okay. I totally agree with you. I think probably the majority of sexual assault cases go unreported, or they're delayed so far, where maybe it happened when the person was an adolescent, and then years later it comes to light. So I totally agree that these sexual assaults are underreported. To answer your question, in 2019 we had 11 sexual assaults reported. Now that's going to cover all degrees of rape, all degrees of sodomy, sexual abuse, and things of that nature. So that was in 2019. So far in 2020, we've had 3 reports of sexual assaults. And it seems like more. Honestly, thinking back, these are the things that stick out in your mind because it's such a personal crime. Frankly, I was surprised when I looked back at the statistics that there weren't more, because they stick out in your mind more than a burglary or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lieutenant, do you think that COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus, do you think it has changed the number of sexual assault cases?
Yeah, I looked at that as well. Prior to March of this year, all 3 of our cases of sexual assault this year were reported prior to March. Since March, we have not had any reports of sexual assault. So I would guess that yes, it is at least. I think we could say that it's at least the reporting of these sexual assaults. It is hampered. A lot of our I won't say a lot, but a fair number of our sexual assaults may occur to children, sexual abuse and things of that nature. And anecdotally, I would say that those those things tick up in the summertime when the children are home from school and they're staying over at other people's houses, or they have more exposure outside the home and unfortunately sometimes within the home. So and then with to get-togethers and drinking parties become more prevalent in the summertime. So I didn't look specifically from 2019 to see what months had more or less sexual assaults, but I would suspect I know from past experience that the summertime produces a lot of these reports, and they may not be a lot of times they don't get reported until the children go back to school, and they have a trusted adult that they may disclose the situation that happened over the summer.
Yes, we were just curious to know, with the COVID-19, because, it just makes you wonder if, because even our numbers of calls have decreased, and we didn't know if is it because people are staying in homes, or is it because people are scared to go to the hospital because they're scared to contact, the coronavirus? So that's interesting, and, to know that, we probably will see a rise in numbers when these children do get back into school, because they have the proper people that can get them to the right resources. Because, the kids have now been out of school for, March, April, May, June. It'll be almost 6 months when the kids actually go physically back into the school system. So it will be, our work and your work might be a lot more, and the sexual assault situation may go up for sure. So you also were talking about, with drinking parties and stuff like, those situations. So do you think that maybe adolescents, from the age 13 to before they're 21, do you think that if they have been sexually assaulted, that they have a fear of calling you guys because they're scared to go to jail for underage drinking? Do you think that's why it's unreported in that age group?
That could be a possibility, but I really feel like the stigma of being a survivor of a sexual assault plays more into that. I think that has more to do with it. They're afraid of, if word got out that this had happened to them, if they were sexually assaulted, that the stigma in their friend group, I think that has more to do with it than anything. And that's from children or adolescents all the way through the stigma that of how people will look at them, and I think false guilt of that they may have caused it or had hand in allowing it to happen, I guess, for lack of a better term. I think that's more of it. We've had instances where there's been reports involving adolescents, and the drinking was disclosed, and it really, I can't say that that's been my experience, but it very well could be. I don't know, and that may be why we're not hearing it. But.
And now, if you were in that scene, would you address the drinking, or would you not, like if an assault had happened?
Well, not with the victim. You're not going to turn around. You're going to keep perspective on what's most important. If you have a young person who's reporting that they've been terribly assaulted, you're not going to be concerned with the fact that they were intoxicated at the time, beyond as far as criminally. And it's not our place really to criticize their life decisions. That's something that would be better handled by a social worker or a counselor than us. We're going to try to keep our eyes on prosecuting the crime. We have had instances where there's been sexual assaults involving juveniles, and come to find out during the course of the investigation that there were adults that were aware that there was alcohol available. They were actively involved in providing not only the alcohol but the I guess the facility to consume it and everything. And in those sort of cases, yes, we will go after those people who are basically perpetuating the opportunity for this type of thing to happen.
Right. And we were also curious about whether, like, how many victims you see come straight to the police instead of the hospital, and also what do y'all have in place to make their survivors feel more comfortable if they do come to the police station? Because, like, for example, when we meet victims at the hospital, we sometimes have different clothing that they can change into, or we might go get them like a snack or some water or something.
Right. Anecdotally, I would say it's probably 50-50 between the police department and the hospital as far as when we become involved. Maybe a slight advantage, so to speak, to the hospital. And we see that a lot of times with children or adolescents, where the concern is of course, as any parent would be, the health and well-being of their child over the criminal prosecution of the case. So they take them immediately to the hospital, and then the hospital notifies us that they have a report of sexual abuse or sexual assault. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten the second part of your question.
It was, how do you make the survivors feel more comfortable when they're at the police station, such as providing them with coffee or something like that?
Okay. Probably the biggest thing is reassuring them, and this goes for victims of or survivors of sexual assault or people who have been in a domestic abuse situation. They present very similarly as far as their reactions and their emotions. The first thing is just reassure them that they hadn't done anything to warrant what happened to them, that they are not at fault for this, that nothing they've done has justified what's happened to them, and that they are now safe, and that we're going to do everything within our power to assist them and take care of them. Quite frankly, if they come to the police department, we're going to gather very basic information about them, and then we're going to get them to the hospital, and then we're going to they're going to be more comfortable at the hospital than at the police department. And that my thought comes in is, let's not prolong this. Let's do what we need to do and get them into a place where they're comfortable, home or a place that they're going to feel safe, because the police department definitely is probably not going to be familiar to them, and the hospital won't be either. So the quicker we can move them through, that process of gathering that evidence and then going home and of course, the biggest thing we do is contact y'all to come in and begin the process of caring for them that way. I know in Opelika, I believe there's more availability for clothing and things there. I think the hospital in Valley, we don't necessarily have that. I think everything that's provided there, I think you guys may actually be involved with. You can probably tell me better what's available than I could.
Yeah, so we actually, at all of the hospitals and all of the counties we serve, we're able to provide a change of clothing to any victim who needs it. We're not able just to like storage and space issues, store it at the Valley Hospital. Like, we are EAMC in Opelika, but we are able to provide clothing. So if we know that we're going to the hospital and we know they need clothing, we will bring clothing with us.
Right, and that's huge, because if it's an incident that's just being reported after it happened, we're going to want all that survivor's clothing and so just from a practical sense, that is huge.
Well, we are always available to you guys. So if you ever have someone that comes to the, police department or the hospital, we're always there for you guys to, be there and do whatever we need to do to help you guys, because we definitely have to work together, and that's why it's awesome to have, good partnerships with everybody, because we can better help the survivor by working together. So kind of going back to when we were talking about, the reports and how, they've decreased, that we'll probably see a rise in the increase. So if you have someone from the school call and tell you that, they've been sexually assaulted, or someone has come and talked to them about that, do you guys go straight to the school and talk to them, or do you have them come to the police station and talk to you guys? And if it's someone that's under the age of 18, do you have to contact their parents first? What does that whole situation look like?
Okay. Well, that's going to depend. If it's an assault that happened at the school, I'll absolutely will go to the school, because now it's become a crime scene, and we're going to be interested in that. But typically, what we see is that, like we were talking earlier, something has happened at home or elsewhere, and now the child's at school. They may have disclosed it to a friend, who's now talked to maybe the school counselor or a teacher there, and then we become aware. It would not be my choice to speak with the child at school. I would rather go ahead and get their, and this is all going to be so, dependent on what the situation is, but, we may come and talk to the child. If the parent hadn't been notified yet, then we may go ahead and get the school involved and get the parent involved. If the child's under 14, we're definitely going to have get the parent involved. As far as filing the report. But I would rather, well, if it's a child, quite honestly, I'm not going to interview them. Any situation where we have a child that's reporting a sexual assault or any crime against themselves, what we would do is we would utilize the services of the Tri-County Children's Advocacy Center to conduct an interview and have a forensic interview done on the child. As far as any specifics, we would gather very basic information about what the situation was, and then we would let the forensic interviewer interview the child, and then get the details of the exact situation that way, so that we don't inadvertently mislead the child or influence their responses.
So I know you mentioned if it was someone under 14 that you had to get parent involvement. It is someone who, say a high schooler has disclosed to someone, the police have been called there at school. How would that differ? Would you be able to directly talk to the high schooler? Would you come to the school, or would you kind of try to do the same thing where you kind of try to take it off campus?
Yeah, my preference, just thinking from the survivor's aspect of it, a lot of eyes, a lot of ears around the school. I would never want to out the victim to other students. So our presence at the school would be out of the ordinary and would draw attention. And it would end up getting, somebody would be in the office and see us talking, coming or going, and put two and two together. And the next thing we know, we've outed the victim or the survivor. I'm sorry, I keep using our terms and not yours. And we would definitely not want to do that. If it wasn't something that happened at the school, the most appropriate thing would be to take that, outside the school. Even if it was a 16, 17-year-old, we would still use the Child Advocacy Center to interview them. And the way that works is they have a forensic interviewer that's specially trained in how to properly question children. Of course, as they get older, it becomes less likely that we're going to inadvertently give them leading questions and stuff like that. But, we would still use that, and when we do use their service. Now, if they requested at that point not to have their parents involved in the is that what you're asking? If the parents have to be involved in the investigation process or the reporting process, is that the question you're asking?
Yes. If they're above 14, if they would have to kind of have like their parents involved. Because I know for us, we are required to call DHR if it's anyone 18 or under. So I wasn't sure like how that went for y'all.
It would be the same for us as well. As you can imagine, coordinating, and it would just, if for no other reason, it would be next to impossible to take a 17-year-old through the legal process of prosecuting a sexual assault case without the involvement of the parents. So yeah, we would always seek parent involvement here.
Okay, well, we really just have one more question for you, kind of like a prevention thing that we had discussed before the podcast. Is there anything in particular that you think would be beneficial for the community to know regarding sexual assault? Any commonalities that you've kind of seen? Just any final statements you want to give?
Yeah, thank you. In the majority of our cases, we see drug or alcohol use as a contributing factor in them. Mm-hmm. We see where another commonality is that people will go to places that they're not familiar with people that they're not more than maybe just passing acquaintances with. They may only know a street name or a first name, or they may not even know that. So as far as prevention of having a sexual assault occur to you, never be intoxicated around people you don't know. Don't go anywhere. Don't go places you don't know. Travel. Go to social activities with people that you trust and that are going to be watching you and watch them. Don't get separated at these parties. Keep an eye on each other. Don't allow yourselves to get split up. Just be very vigilant. There are people out there they're prowling, they're waiting for somebody to take advantage of.
Definitely. So we actually go in and teach the high schoolers about safe dating and like sexual abuse. And this is something we like to touch on the end, just because I think it's kind of like every community member's responsibility to kind of like act as a bystander. If you see something, you need to say something, you need to intervene. I think that's a really good point. I think we all need to be looking out for each other a little bit more in these situations. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on our podcast. We really appreciate it. Does anyone else have any other comments before we go?
Just want to thank you for coming on and talking with us, and we just appreciate you guys so much for you and for the whole police department in Lanett. And so we just want to thank you for your service and everything that you do for our community to keep our victims and survivors safe and everybody else that's in need of help.
Yes, we're so glad.
We really appreciate your insight and your perspective that you've given us today too.
Yes, definitely. We like working very closely with our community partners and members, because really we're just here to help each other. And so it's good to get to talk to you. But thank you so much for joining us today, like everyone has said, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.